Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 226, and we're going to talk about a bunch of topics. I didn't have anything really long-winded that would make a complete episode, so I thought I'd throw in three different thoughts that I had going on. The first one is Jim Gaffigan. I watched his Al Smith dinner roast, and it was a sort of back in the day roast, right? He roasted both political parties who were present, and he even poked a little fun at the church as well, because the Al Smith dinner was a memorial dinner for, I think he said, the first governor of New York State. And so a lot of dignitaries are invited. You're almost obligated to go, particularly if you are um, running for president. So Donald Trump was there, as well as a lot of Democrats, including the lawyer who went after Trump in New York City. So I thought it was really interesting. And, you're supposed to be able to try to make peace, at least for the dinner. And it was fascinating to see. And the person who did not go was, of course, Kamala Harris. And Gaffigan was quick to point out that the only other vice president running for president who blew off the dinner was um, Walter Mondale, and he didn't win. So perhaps he was saying, is this a predictive pattern that we could kind of rely on? And it's interesting because there are a lot of Catholics who are in this country, like 22% of the United States is Catholic. And so making an appeal to the Catholic vote, one would want to go there. It's almost silly not to go too, primarily because of the negative press that would come for not going. But all those things aside, I thought that it would be interesting to remind everyone that entertainers or comedians are supposed to roast everyone. That's basically their function in society, is that they have to roast everyone because everyone has, uh, a vulnerability that you can poke fun of. And I'm sure that a lot of people over the years, and even now, make fun of me. Even my middle school students make fun of me, mostly because of my nearsightedness. When I try to read something, I put it very close to my face. And so they roast me all of that. And there are other things too that they'll laugh at, which I don't think are funny, but to them, it's the funniest thing ever. And so that's what comedy is supposed to be. People are supposed to roast each other. And lately, what you begin to see is that one-sidedness when it comes to a lot of comedians. But when you're one-sided like that, you have a political agenda, and it comes out in the comedy shtick that you do as well. And it's just not funny. Um, and so it was great to see Jim Gaffigan give equal measures out to pretty much everyone who was there. But if you look at the number of jokes made towards the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party, there were a lot more for the Democrats. And that's mostly because there were so many of them there that night. And New York City and state, I believe, they always go Democrat. And so it's going to lean that way. So thinking of Jim Gaffigan, it made me reminded me of Ricky Gervais, who would host. He would be the host at some Hollywood Awards ceremony. Is it Academy Awards? I don't know, some awards ceremony. But when he goes up there, and there are still videos of him on YouTube giving and roasting everyone who's there. Obviously, everyone who's listening to him and are the target of and do the very things that he's pointing out don't enjoy it, right? It's almost like suddenly you're not allowed to joke about things. But, his very dry and very, how shall I say, not unapologetic comedic style offends a lot of people, but it's funny because it's true. And so with Ricky Gervais, nothing is off limits. And depending on who's in the audience, that's who he's going to go after. And the great thing about comedians and comedy and the social function that it's supposed to serve is to get people to sort of come off their high horse and reevaluate the positions that they have, that there are definitely problematic aspects to whatever policy or whatever personality that that person is trying to give off. In other words, most people cannot smell their own hypocrisy. It's really annoying. And so when comedians drift into hypocrisy, it's not funny anymore. Um, so that's what comedians are supposed to do, is to call people out for their, uh, for the wrongs, for the things that they would rather have forgotten or be thought of in a particular way and spin it and then make fun of it. That's the whole job and role and function of comedians. And so for a while, especially with the rise of wokeness, comedians just sort of disappeared. It was like it's like a investigative reporter. You can't find them anywhere. And so it's great to see someone like Jim Gaffigan, who is extremely funny and extremely popular, especially since his humor, doesn't include a lot of profanity. Whether he curses a lot in private is besides the point. When he does his comedy, it's not full of F-bombs. And so I think for that reason, he has a very broad appeal and is extremely funny. And so for him to return to a kind of measured comedic roast of everyone who was in the room, it was awesome to see. There are a lot of people, however, in entertainment world that cannot smell their own hypocrisy. I mean, it's a thing where it's like, oh, I'm an actor, I play a smart person on screen, so I'll continue to play that part in reality. And it's just like, really? Seriously? I mean, a good actor, right? And apparently we use that word for men and women, but a good actor is someone who lies well, who pretends well. And so it's kind of interesting to have to see them, uh, you know, sort of say that they're being genuine, but yet their job is to pretend. I thought that's always kind of an interesting thing to me, like how much of whatever it is that they're saying is acting and how much of it is real. I mean, actual politicians do a lot of acting, journalists do a lot of acting. So, at what point can we say that actors are not acting? Anyway, something I think about anyway. Uh, so when an actor actually does come out with their personal opinions, it's like, okay, you're allowed to have your own opinion. You can believe whatever it is you want. But when someone starts forcing everyone to have to agree to their personal belief, well, it gets kind of awkward. Sort of like, I remember this one time, Richard Gere, when he was popular, Richard Gere came out, accepted some award, or maybe he was moderating, I don't know, which means that he had to have gotten an award at some point. But he started meditating at the podium, and I thought that was weird, right? It was not well known at the time. This was like 30 years ago, perhaps, where he starts meditating at the podium, and this was just really weird. Like, not, I think he was might have been the first person to do it. Uh, and so it's just kind of weird, but it's like, okay, I mean, whatever, right? It's one thing to believe, it's another thing to force other people to abide by your belief, right? Legislation of morality, right? Everything is religion, right? Everything is system of belief to someone. And so if I can't, you know, share my beliefs, my personal Christian beliefs with my class, then no one should be able to say anything about anything, right? Whether it's climate change, are Russians bad, or is Putin bad? Is Israel right? All of this stuff is a matter of subjective opinion or a system of belief. And so no one should be able to force other people to have to agree to what they believe is true. In other words, religion doesn't have to necessarily be a god. I've talked about this many times. Atheism is the most fanatical religion there is, right? I made the mistake of watching some atheist YouTube channels, and they are very extremely hardcore I don't think I ever was like that as a Jesus freak, trying to get other people to realize their stupidity and become an atheist. It's just, yeah, I don't know if I've actually said that kind of stuff to people. So, and it's interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon. You might ask, what about those opening prayers, a prayer at political ceremonies? Like even at my old college, we would have a convocation, and I looked it up, and it's sort of like a prayer meeting to begin the semester, right? What? But when you actually go, they downplay the religious aspect of it, and the convocation just simply becomes an assembly, right, for where everyone is invited to come. But when it comes to civil ceremonies, right, government-related ceremonies, and they begin with a prayer, that probably is tradition, or someone who had a lot of power and influence once upon a time said, you know what we need? We need a prayer right here. And so they inserted a prayer. I can take it or leave it, and the reason is because usually right after the prayer, they start just lying, cheating, and stealing, right? So it's just kind of a it's just kind of awkward to me that politicians would have someone come and do a prayer when all they do is engage in shady behavior. But an actor sharing their opinion, a comedian sharing their opinion, it's okay, whatever. But when they start becoming politically active, meddlesome, and interferes with freedom, then no thanks, right? I would rather they just not say anything at all. And so Jim Gaffigan, I remember when he did an interview with Joe Rogan, and I saw a couple of clips, and I thought, oh man, I like Jim Gaffigan a lot, but clearly here he seems to be uh, somewhat closed-minded and biased. And so it was really nice to see whether he, was if he stopped being so TDS, right? Trump derangement syndrome is besides the point, right? Because he did his job. He roasted everyone who was there. And those jokes were harsh. If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, you got to see it, but they were pretty harsh. Um, so speaking of Trump, I mean, he was everywhere. He was in Philadelphia, then he was in Lancaster, then he was in Pittsburgh watching a football game. In Philadelphia, it's just outside the suburbs of Philadelphia, just outside the city limits, Feasterville, which is not that far from where I live, right? So I thought it was funny, we after service was over, and I did my Sunday episode. I opened up Twitter and or X and saw that he was down the street. It was kind of funny. There was no way I was going to, get close or even see, so I didn't even bother. But it was very, very like 5 minutes. I 5 minute drive. I'd be right where Trump was serving fries, right? Now, it's it's funny because he was trolling Harris, right? Ms. Harris apparently lied, said that she worked at McDonald's and never did. Even McDonald's came out and said, we have no record of this. And even if she did, all she'd have to do is say, oh, no, I worked at this McDonald's, which is no longer there. That's why you have no records. That easily could have been something she said, but, there is no reply. So obviously she lied. And so just to troll Harris, he works at a McDonald's. Now, there are other, uh, messages wrapped up with this trip to McDonald's. He's pro-business, he's pro-work, he's pro-worker, especially lower wage workers. But it's also curious because fast food has become so expensive. We don't go anymore. I can't tell you the last time I went to a fast food place. I remember my wife would go all the time to treat the kids, and I'd be like, why are we doing this? I didn't mind when cheeseburgers were 45 cents, or was it 35 cents a cheeseburger, right? I remember when I was in college, we would get a per diem of $5 and we'd stop at McDonald's and I'd buy six hamburgers. Each hamburger was 33 cents. And so I could get six hamburgers for $2. And then I could save the $3 to buy something else, right? I wouldn't drink anything. It would just be six burgers. I would fill up and that was good enough for me. But nowadays, it's just so expensive with the same amount of money to feed my four kids and my wife and myself. I could have a great sushi platter. I could have a great filling Chinese takeout order. I can order several pizzas. So it's like we don't go anymore. So I thought that was kind of interesting that Mickey D's it speaks so many things, especially when it comes to inflation. But when you also look at it another way, you got a billionaire who's willing to fry up some fries. Uh, so he's working versus the insider, the political insider uh, who lies about working, who lies about being middle class as a young person, who, when they make public appearances like this, it has to be rehearsed. There are several takes. Let's try it this way, let's try it that way. Trying to be totally natural, and it's not. It's very contrived, and it comes off that way. But Trump, he walks in, strolls around, and he's just himself. And I gotta say, as much as I don't like his style, his bombastic exaggerations and whatnot, I seeing his kids and how they're kind of adjustment, they're not cokeheads like Hunter Biden. It's kind of neat to see, right? But of course, media is only going to focus on a felon getting a job at McDonald's uh, you know, or warmongers, poking fun at Trump. They totally miss the point, right? I mean, there are many unconvicted felons, politicians that are walking around free. There are a lot of war criminals, warmongers who are also war criminals who are walking on the loose, right? Uh, but no one's coming after them. So what is it about Trump that makes him worse than all these other people, which makes that Babylon Bee movie about January 6th, how it was the worst day in all of American history, so hilarious? Because that's what Democrats are saying, or anyone who believes in the January 6th thing, that it was the worst day ever. Now, I said from day one, look, if your coup involves no weapons and a guy who dresses up like Fred Flintstone, yeah, this is not a serious coup. If it even is a coup, I mean, it's ridiculous. And the fact that so many people are so eager to hate on Trump and find a reason to hate on him, will jump on the bandwagon about this January 6th thing is just so incredible, unbelievable, right? It's incredible. Which then takes me to the last topic, and that is that the Democrats have become the party of the rich. I mean, look at who support Harris, the rich donor class, right? So when people were struggling in the aftermath of the hurricane, she's having what, lobster dinner at some fundraising thing, right? She's only the nominee because the nominee who was primaried into that position, right? Super delegates came in. Super delegates are basically these rich donor class who handpick the actual, candidate for the Democratic Party, negating all the primaries, negating the desires of the people, right? And so warmongers and the people who get rich off of their political term, like Obama, Cheney, etc., they're the people who support Harris, right? I mean, uh, Obama, who was what, $6 million net asset worth, or maybe less than that, when he became a junior senator out of Illinois. And then now he's like over $100 million he has in terms of his total assets. I mean, come on. These are clearly it's the party of the rich. These people do not feel the pinch of a bad economy. They don't feel the intrusion of so many illegal immigrants. They don't have the pain of losing a job. Now, obviously, there are wealthy people who are also supporting Trump, wealthy, corrupt people supporting Trump. Yeah, there are always going to be people like that trying to play an angle, get an advantage over their competitors, right? But there are far more poor people who are on the side of Trump because that's what they're suffering suffering from is the bad economy. And so the people who are fanatically in favor of Harris, you can't help but imagine that it's the uber wealthy, it's the very wealthy, the people who don't feel all of the pain of a bad economy. I got to say it again. I really do not like Trump's style, bombastic style of exaggeration. I don't like it, right? Because in scripture it says, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." And so I get that he's strategizing, he's negotiating, he's prepping for the negotiation. It's sort of like haggling. You got to go either super high or super low. But my nature is to always understate everything, which is why I always hated haggling, which is why I love this out the door price thing that you now see more and more at car dealerships. But I thought about it a lot. I struggled with it as an anarcho-capitalist, but I think that I am of the party of not Harris. So a lot of people are in the party of anyone but Trump. I am of the party not Harris because Harris is such an idiot. She's such a puppet. She's not even a good actor. She's not even a good faker. And her background checks are not even that well manufactured, right? Her fake backgrounds not very well manufactured. And if I got my wife on here and talking about all the family backgrounds that Candace Owens is doing now for all these politicians, then definitely it's a different kind of rabbit hole that we go down. But I always say, well, it's plausible, but how much of it can you prove? How much of it do people care about? And I think that if the office of president had very little power, had very little control over any money at all, I wouldn't care if she was some kind of Manchurian candidate because none of it would matter. She would have no power, right? She would be constitutionally limited in what she could do. And so I am the party of not Harris. Are there enough people who are not Harris out there voting, which will make it very, very difficult for the Democrats to fabricate lots of votes this time around? I don't know. And that's what needs to happen. A lot of people, right, in the millions have to go the way of Trump to make it very, very difficult, not impossible, but very, very difficult for the Democrats to fabricate votes like they did last time, because it's pretty obvious that they did. I mean, there's enough video. It's not a conspiracy theory. And just the fact that they're trying to get rid of voter ID and all these other say checks to make sure that the voting process is fair and legitimate. Well, obviously, all the signs are there. I mean, you have to be pretty naive to say, no, 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 all of this is what they say it is. We'll see, right? We'll see. But yeah, I just don't want Harris to win. Um, but we'll see. That's it for this episode. I hope you have a great evening, and I'll talk to you next time.